21 puzzles are already solved. What's happening here? Black is attacking the knight on g3. Pretty easy. So the bishop on f2, yes, I'll point it, the bishop on f2 and the queen on c7, and they are attacking this pawn. So queen g3 will come with a mate, materially it's equal. So many of you suggested knight h5 with the threat of queen g7, and there is no defense. There is simply no defense. So let's just play knight h5. Why knight h5 is possible? Because g takes h5 cannot be played, as this bishop is pinning the g6 pawn. That's why knight h5 is a good move. Bishop d4. After bishop d4, we simply take queen takes d4, because once again the knight cannot be taken. So we simply are bishop up. New puzzle. What about queen g? How about queen g5? Queen g5 was possible, but it was not attacking anything. So why not to take the bishop if you could do it? So let's take a look at the new puzzle. Quickly calculating material, it's equal. Black played bishop d6, pinning the e5 knight. If the knight moves, the bishop will take the queen. Moreover, now black is threatening to take it, because look at how many pieces are attacking the e5 square. It's 1, 2, 3, while white has only 1, 2 defenses. So basically the knight on e5 is hanging. What can white do? Knight d7. Yes, right. So let's try to calculate. Knight d7. If black takes back bishop d7 or knight d7, then we take the bishop for free. If knight d7, a bishop takes d3, we first take the queen. So we already memorized that we took the knight. So we are after knight b6, we are a piece up, and we are attacking the rook. So if black captures our knight, we take the bishop, and we are again a piece up. Knight d7, bishop g3, knight b6. If a takes b6, we take with anything, and we are a piece up. So knight d7 is a good move and a nice move and a correct move. Bishop takes f2, okay, intermediate move, but still we will be a piece up. New puzzle. Okay, this one is more difficult. Once again, quickly calculating the material. We are pawn down. What is the threat? What is black's threat? Not like a serious threat, but they played queen e4, trying to trade the queens, and they will be safer. Because what do we see? That both kings basically are more or less not so well placed, because this king is exposed, and look at this rook on f6, which is attacking, while white's king would prefer to be on h1, where it feels much safer. So what are the moves? Some of you suggested queen h5, some of you suggested knight g5, nice options. Let's think a little bit. What happens if white takes knight g5, and why it doesn't work? After knight g5, right, first there will be the queen trade. So after knight g5, black doesn't take, 8 takes d5, because we go queen g5 and then we mate with rook h6. So they will not allow that. After knight g5, they will take on g4 first, and if we take on g4, they will take on g5, and they will say, thank you for a piece. That's why we don't play knight g5. So why don't we play rook f4 attacking the queen? Queen takes the rook, yes, as easy as that. Queen takes the rook, and after queen takes the queen, black takes the queen, as this queen is no longer on g4. So rook f4 is not a good move. Well, let's go with queen h5. Many of you suggested that. Queen h7, this was also written. Knight g5, nice tactic. 8 takes g5, queen takes d5, king h8, and rook h6, pinning and winning the queen. It was a really cute line. We are moving to the next one, queen h4. Queen h4 is a really tempting move. So we see that we are a piece down only for a pawn. So, but we also see that this knight, when we have this knight and this king, we always imagine that if we put the queen on h7, it will be a mate. Let's try to do it. So queen h4 seems like a very logical. We can quickly calculate what happens if knight e6, then f takes e6. If we take on f8, queen f8, rook f8, rook f8, we just traded the pieces, while of course trading the pieces is in black's favor. So we can't play queen c2 because this knight is here. Be careful with the knights, they are tricky pieces. So let's, oops, no, not like this. Let's attack. Bishop f5. The line after rook e8 is correct. Yes, just queen h7, king f8, and knight e6 would be the mate. The rook takes f5, deflection, queen d4. So be careful. This is sometimes this works in blitz because sometimes people just see that it's like a check and we have to move the king, but this king is unprotected, and in fact this queen is attacking another queen, so you can simply take it. New puzzle. Rook e6. What's happening? I don't really see the idea of creating this puzzle because it's like both d takes e6 and rook e6. Both moves are really good. By intuition, I would prefer rook takes e6, but both of the moves are pretty much okay. I would prefer a rook takes e6. I'll explain you why. Because after we play a rook takes e6, a rook takes e6, and d takes e6, then no one will attack this pawn. I mean, comparing to the line, if we take d takes e6 immediately and black goes knight e5, they block my rook from protecting the knight, and then this rook will attack this pawn. And that's what I don't like so much. Not like it's a big problem, because after knight e5 you can still play something like c5, or I believe not only one move is winning in that position, but still I think it's somehow more precise to take with the rook first. Let's try to check it. Let's check. Oh, okay, I was right. But I mean, this puzzle was a little bit strange. New position, pawn endgame, and pawn endgames are known to be the endgames which can be calculated until the very end, until the final result. That's why you have to calculate pawn endgames very carefully. So what's happening here? We see that this pawn is on a6, this one is on a5, so okay, so this pawn is moving there, while this pawn is moving there. Okay, got it. Basically this puzzle is a little bit strange in the beginning, but okay, it's just pretty much easy that we have to first to take this pawn and then think what's going on. So let's make a few moves, but the most important moment is here, because we have to be very careful that this king doesn't reach the b2 square, because when it reaches the b2 square it will be a draw. So it's very important to play king b4 and make this body check, so we don't allow king c3. While if king d3, we play king b3. If king d2, one more important move, king b2, because if we move the pawn first, the king comes to c1 and we can no longer promote it. Then the king goes just this and this way. So first we play this move, then we play that move, and then we promote the pawn. It's not an opposition, it's a body check. The opposition, it's a little bit different theme. Maybe we will cover it, I mean, if you get this position. Let's take a look at the new position, rook c7 and rook g7. Let's just see. Take, white takes back, rook g7, pinning the knight, and I think no one can defend this knight on f7, so it looks pretty like a solution. Rook g7 and rook f7. Winning the knight. Oh, this position I really like. Knight g6, yes, be careful. Look at this bishop controlling this diagonal and this square, so the king can't go here. And if we check, the only move is checking, and queen h3 will be the mate. So check, mate. New one, king g5. Once again, let's try to... Oh, okay, this pawn is going this direction, so it's just one move from the queen. One move from the queen. King g5 was played, queen c1, and then promoting on the next move. Let's try if it works. Yes, it works. Moreover, we check with we queen with a check. We promote with a check. New one, knight f6 was played. What do you think about this position? Queen with a check. Queen takes e6. Good suggestion. Why not? And knight f6 and queen b7. Even better. Why not? Of course, I think it's knight f6. Okay, let's quickly calculate the material. Black is a pawn up. What is the threat? Threat was attacking the queen. What happens if we first take the bishop? If we first take the bishop, then what happens? Then black will take our knight on h5, and this bishop is protected by this queen, so we can't take queen e7 because of queen e7. So that's why first we take the knight, and it's a check. Be careful, so the bishop can't take our queen. Bishop can't play bishop e4 because it's a check, and on the next move we take the bishop, winning the piece. Well done! Bishop d6 was played. Okay, once again, let's calculate the material. White is a piece up at the moment for one pawn. What's the threat? The threat is to take the queen. Queen is under the attack. But we, at the same time, we also see that this bishop is under the attack and this queen is under the attack. So if we simply take the bishop, okay, Naycir, I will try not to make this mistake. If we take the bishop first, then white will take this pawn. Queen takes b7. Look at this poor king. The material will be equal, but this poor king is really poor. It's under the attack. So many of you already suggested queen takes e1 first. Then we take the queen, and after this small combination, we will be an exchange and a pawn up. And we are attacking the bishop. So everything is cool. Life is perfect. New position, and it's a very interesting topic after rook c5. What's happening? What's your ideas? So material it's equal. Black has just taken something on c5. First to take on c5, and it's important. And now deflection. This rook is protecting the queen. So if we check and black takes our rook, we take the queen and we win queen. And if after rook d8, king goes to h7, we take this rook, and now it will be our rook on c8, which will be protecting this queen. So if black takes the queen, we will take back and we will be a rook up. So let's go. Rook d8 and queen c5. It was also very important that rook d1 was not coming with a mate because we had king h2. D takes e6. Oh, this one is also nice, but I believe some of you will solve it pretty quickly. And then knight b3. Check. This bishop is controlling this diagonal, so king b1 or king c2 is not possible. King d2 is not possible because the queen is here. So the only move is a takes b3, and then what's happening? Let's go knight b3, rook a1, and rook b1 mate. New one, rook e6. White is 2 pawns up, the rook on f5 is under the attack. White's king on c1 is awkwardly placed. It may be under the attack very soon. Bishop g4. Okay, with bishop g4 you're defending the rook, but it's not the move with a tempo. So first check. Why here? Why not there? Because when we go there, then the king has more moves. Then the king can move here and there. So we go here. King c2 is the only move. And now we sacrifice the bishop. Because the king can't go there, the king will not be able to go there. If the king goes to c1, we will move the bishop to b3 and we will mate. So we sacrifice the bishop. Queen takes. We give the check. Why do we give the check? Because if the king goes here or here, we take the queen. So rook f2 check. Well, king b3, we obviously take the queen and it's over. But what could happen? Let's just imagine the king is still here. What happens if the king goes to c1? And of course, you had to calculate everything. So if king goes to c1, what's happening? Yeah, it's very important. We play queen e3, and the only move so that not to resign immediately is queen d2, while after queen d2 we will mate. But of course this line it was very important to see all this line when we played the first move, queen e1, and especially when we sacrificed. So especially when we sacrifice the bishop on d1, because it's not like you can sacrifice and then, okay, whatever happens. No, when you sacrifice, you have to be sure what you are going to do next. So, okay, we calculated this nice line with bishop d1. Now we won the queen by this nice combination, and we continue with the next puzzle. Here it is. once again, what's happening? White is a pawn up. What's the threat? The threat is to take the rook. What happens if we take back? The rook will take and it will be the checkmate. So rook d8 is not a good move. And we are in serious troubles because it's not so easy to defend this rook. Well, of course, we can play queen c5 or queen a3, defending the rook, or rook b8. It's also possible, but it's very passive. Let's try to look for more interesting moves and more interesting solutions. Some of you suggested rook h2, some of you suggested knight g3. So many arrows. Now we think what we will play. Now, another one. What's wrong with queen c5? There is nothing wrong with queen c5. It perfectly defends the rook on f8. It doesn't allow queen f8 mate. But the move like queen c5 is not the move with which we win something. So, new suggestions. Knight g3, knight f2, rook h2. I think we are left only with these ones. So, knight g3 is the correct move. And I think we will come to the line knight g3, h takes g3, queen f4, rook f3, queen f3, king g1, and queen g2 mate. But what's happening? What's wrong with knight f2 or with rook h2? Let's start with knight f2. It's easier. Knight f2, rook takes f2. Knight f2, rook takes f2. And if we check queen e4, then white goes king g1 and there is no mate on g2 because the rook on f2 is protecting the square. That's why knight f2 is wrong. What's happening after knight g3? Knight g3, h takes g3. Okay, this one we will go later. So let's try rook h2. Why it's wrong to start with rook h2? Because king h2, queen g3, king h1. Now knight f2, it's not the mate because white has rook f2. Some of you wrote about queen h3, but queen h3 is not a good move because bishop h3 and queen h4 instead of queen h3 is also bad because queen is here, it's controlling this square. That's why rook h2 is wrong again. So that's why it is correct to start with knight g3, queen e4, and queen g2 mate, as some of you pointed. And we have a new position. Rook e1 was played. So you have all calculated the material. It's equal. The bishop on e6 is unprotected. d4 wins the f3 knight. Look, after d4, these two bishops are controlling all the moves, all the squares where this queen can retreat. Why not bishop b4? Because after bishop b4 there is at least queen b3. After d4 this possibility doesn't exist. So that's why d4 and knight d4, attacking the queen on c3 and at the same time protecting the bishop on e6. New one, king d1. Okay, this position is half interesting because white is bishop up, bishop only for one pawn. So I think there is more than one way leading to Rome. That's why I don't think this position is really very, very exciting, but let's try to solve it and let's try to find the best solution. So you already have some ideas like playing king e3, threatening rook c1 mate. Why not rook c1 immediately? Because the king can go to d2. So king e3, taking care of this square. After king e3, d2 is the only move because otherwise rook c1 will come with a mate. So what will happen after king e3, d2? Rook c1, then bishop c3. Be careful because rook c1, king d2 after bishop c3, it's not the mate because a black can take the rook. There will be king c1. I believe king e3, d2 and rook d5 is the solution. Let's try to make it this one and rook d5 and then taking the important d pawn, which was a little bit annoying. Next position. What do we have here? White is 2 exchanges up for only one pawn, but these bishops are really very strong. Queen h2 was suggested, or bishop c5. What else? Bishop b4. Bishop b4 is a nice pin, but in the best case we will just win an exchange, which is not enough because white will be still more exchange up, more, or after bishop b4, I think rook c4 can be played, attacking the queen and attacking the bishop. So I think bishop b4 is wrong. Bishop c5, king g1 is the only move, and well, we can go back trying to checkmate with the queen h2. This is one of the ideas, but in the worst case, white will go king g1. Maybe there is even something better. I don't see anything better. I think white will have to go back with king g1 and it will be the repetition. One more idea is queen h2, king f1, queen h1, and then take on g2. I think it's a good idea. I think queen h2 is correct. Let's try to calculate it. Queen h2, let's first make this move. King f1, why not king f2? Because we could take this pawn immediately. So what do we do now? We can check on h1, which seems very logical. Another interesting move is to play bishop c5, because with bishop c5 then we threaten queen g1 mate or queen h1 mate. So this move is also looking very appealing to me. Bishop c5, I don't even see what will white do, because there are two moves which are looking very good, like bishop c5 and queen h1 immediately. Somehow I even prefer bishop c5. Rook e3, yes, it looks like the only possibility, but after rook e3 we check queen h1, king f2, we play queen g2, and it will be the checkmate. If white plays something like, I think after bishop c5 white has to move the queen from e2. Why not bishop g3 then? Because after bishop g3 white can take rook g3. That's why I preferred bishop c5. Okay, bishop c5 is an interesting possibility, but let's take a look at another possibility from which we started. What happens if we start with queen h1? It's more forcing, so queen h1, king f2. If we play bishop c5 now, then there is king g3. So it looks like it doesn't work. So queen h1, king f2, queen g2, the only move. King e3, the only move. What's happening now? If bishop c5 now, then king d2, that's all. If queen g3, then again king d2. So we have not to allow king d2. The only move which doesn't allow king d2 is queen g5. Queen e4, king d2, bishop f4, rook e3, and no mate. Queen g5. Okay, the king can't go to d2. The king can't go to d4 because it's queen c5 mate. But the king can go back to f2. What do we do then? Then we play bishop c5, and after king f1 there is queen g1 mate, while after rook e3 or queen e3 it's queen g2 mate. So I think queen h1 is the correct solution because it's forced mate, but I also believe that bishop c5 in this position is winning. Bishop c5 might still be winning. I think black if white has to play queen e8, of course it's still winning, but I mean, I really think like two moves are winning, so now you have to be careful with chess.com. What was chess.com's solution? I believe it was queen h1 because it's more forcing. So let's try. I'm not sure. Check. So, okay, good, because I have already made so many times a mistake like that two moves were winning and I was choosing one which chess.com didn't. We go with the line we calculated. I mean, what is this? What is that? At least chess.com had to allow us to show the whole solution. No? Yeah, it's funny. I mean, queen g2, and yes, you were right. Okay, thank you. I mean, everybody saw queen g2, but we had to calculate it longer till the very end. And queen g5 was a very important move after king e3. Here we are. Material, it's equal. What does black want? They can threaten to play b4 or just to trade the queens. Rook c1. There is this pin. So after rook c1, there are not so many moves. Black has to take the queen. What do we do after that? Rook c1, queen a3. What do we do after that? Rook c8, very important move. Why is it important? We take the rook first. The king, the only move for the king is black can just play king g7. What do we do after that? Rook c8, king g7, and yes, very important, we take one more rook. We don't take on a3. We don't capture the queen immediately because after king g7, this rook on c8 will be under the attack. So taking into account that the king moved to g7, the rook g8 move comes with another check, and if king captures, only then we capture black's queen and we will be a rook up, full rook up. Well done to everyone who solved it. It was not such a very easy calculation. So once more important, the rook is under the check. First we take the rook with a check, and only now we take the queen. 40 puzzles. I think here we will make a break because we have already been thinking for quite long, and I think there is a possibility to save this one and we will start a new stream from puzzle number 41. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Thank you once again. See you all tomorrow.